Right, welcome to Operator Radio. Today, Culture Radio from the International Film Festival of Rotterdam. And we got two guests here, none other than the legendary Don Letts and the filmmaker of the documentary about Don Letts, Rebel Dread, William E. Badgley.
Yep.
Right, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time to visit Operator Radio in Rotterdam.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good. Now, of course, you both are...
Can you swear on Operator Radio?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay, not that I want
internet.
to, but it just came to me that something might come out. But okay, good. I'm glad we cleared that up.
We're on the internet, so
good.
different rules.
Okay, cool.
You are here to promote Rebel Dread. How did this movie came into existence?
Over to Bill, the director.
This is my third film. My second film was a feature doc on the Slits. And I made that film with Phil, who's right here. And so when it was done, Phil kind of, he's been friends and a fan of Don for a really long time. And he'd been wanting to do this for, I think, probably quite a long time. And was like, I want to do this. Do you want to do it? And of course, it was immediately like, absolutely. Because I'd met Don during the Slits film.
Yeah. Since Don, you managed the...
I tried to manage. I mean, people say I managed them, but basically I gave them some money to go on tour with The Clash, the White Riot tour.
Yeah.
And at the end of that 3 months or 2 months or whatever it was, I decided that they were definitely unmanageable.
But, all right.
But truly, this Rebel Dread project is really a producer's passion project.
Absolutely.
Because if it wasn't for Phil's passion, it wouldn't exist. So if you don't like it, you got Phil to blame.
So it's maybe it's difficult to pinpoint what you do, Mr.
Yeah,
Letts.
what have you got? What have you got today?
Filmmaker, DJ.
I'm primarily, I consider myself to be primarily a filmmaker, but there's lots of gaps where you're not making film. So I need to supplement my income like most creative people. And I've also got a show on BBC Radio I've had for 10 years called Culture Clash Radio. I DJ nationally and internationally, recently entered the world of podcasts. I mean, the bottom line is I live in London. I've got two teenage kids, and they're bloody expensive. So I create to survive.
So from the start on, you had a vital role in the London music scene.
An accidental role, actually. An accidental role. What happened was I got the gig to DJ at the London's very first punk rock club. It was called the Roxy. And this was so early in the scene that there were no punk records to play. No English ones anyway. So I played what I like. I played hardcore dub reggae. Lucky for me, the punks seemed to love it. And a kind of bond was formed between these two genres that led to something called the Punky Reggae Party, which is all about the exchange of culture, really. And, like I said, accidentally I got the gig to DJ. And, it all happened by chance, man. As most beautiful things do. So
culture is a word which pops up a lot in the documentary on different levels. Your radio shows...
Every level except a Petri dish. Go on.
Yes. No, it is the thing that makes up yogurt. Yeah. How would you say that the sort of the Jamaican roots and because we get a small insight into the Jamaican community in London, how would you contribute that to in sort of the goings towards the punk scene?
Oh, that's easy. I mean, although musically they're sonically miles apart, spiritually we were like-minded rebels. We were both sort of outsiders, and we came together through a mutual respect of each other's culture. I liked the whole punk DIY thing. They loved the heavy bass lines, and they didn't mind the weed either, it has to be said. I mean, I think what we're really talking about is the power of culture to unite the people and make the world a slightly better place, man.
Yeah, because you mentioned that there were sort of like no racial tensions in Brixton.
Not really, not before the politicians got involved.
Right.
When the people were left to their own devices, they worked things out. When the politicians decided that they need to, divide and rule, people like Enoch Powell made a famous speech, the Rivers of Blood speech. In fact, it's very similar to what's going on now with Trump. Divide and rule, blame the immigrants, and get rid of them and everything will be solved. Not true.
Yeah. Yeah, and in Britain, of course, you've got Brexit going on.
We've got Brexit, we've got not the National Front, what are they called now? The British Defence League and all. It's a joke. It's a joke. Brexit's a joke. The English are fucking stupid. Swear word number one.
Bill, was this important as well for your view on, say, Mr. Let's Now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really interesting to me the whole idea that, the fusion other than, just the musicality. I think anytime there's an important fusion in music, it is like, Don was saying, like due to a vibe, like something deeper. Like the chord structures are not the thing that's, the thing that sits on top is not going to be the thing that brings people together. The heart is the thing that's going to bring people together. And I thought it was really interesting, talking about a culture that already had a substantial knowledge of how to operate in terms of limited resources and to band together and accomplish things and have that strength. And it was really a strength that they could immediately lend to, I think the kids that would eventually became, known as punks.
Yeah.
To say, hey, like you could just like pick this up. But I also see what I thought was really cool is that it becomes reciprocal too, of like, watch the Jamaican kids watching the young British kids be so brave and kind of being like, oh shit, we could be a little bit more brave too, and we could keep walking out and keep doing it. So it's not like it was just one-sided. It's like any great union and coming together, it was even.
Yeah,
we were egging each other on.
Yeah. What I find interesting about culture is that it can lead to subcultures. And it also has this sort of symbolism, which narrows something down. For instance, when you think of punk culture, the safety pin, some small object.
Yeah, that was a mistake though, to reduce punk to a safety pin. Listen,
no. I don't want to reduce it, but it says it stands for something. It's an image which is recognizable. Right, I mean, you can identify yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a great believer that every generation needs its own soundtrack, and along with that soundtrack comes the imagery and the style and the fashion. And you're right, every generation needs that, their own expression of that.
Yeah, but it sort of disappeared.
It's funny you should say that because, in the last half of the 20th century, England kept throwing up these different subcultures: teddy boys, mods, skinheads.
You were known as a freak. Is that correct?
Well, a freak. Yeah.
Is that a
That's
subculture?
more generic. That was a generic term because I wasn't prepared to be defined by my colour. So I was always the freak in my area. But what I'm saying is, the last half of the 20th century, England threw up all these different subcultures. And then when the millennium happens, the whole thing flatlines.
Yeah.
They literally cease to exist. And I maintain that's something to do with the advent of the digital age and the internet. Because no longer did you have to meet a friend round the corner or in a record shop or in a club to start a subculture. You could connect with them through your laptop and through your screen. So that killed the necessity to form these little style-driven subcultures. Because subculture is by no means dead. That would be a really stupid thing to say. It just doesn't look as good.
Do you agree with that, Bill?
That's well dressed.
That's well dressed. Yeah.
It's well, no, it's like, come on, a mixtape. You look at a mixtape, it's a really beautiful thing to look at. It's got a cover. You look at your playlist on a laptop. Not very sexy. Not the same, is it?
No.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. You named a few other subcultures, right? Teddy boys.
Oh man, we got shitload in England. What do you got? Two-tone, teddy boys, mods,
could you perhaps,
skinheads?
Yeah.
Skinheads?
Could you please elaborate on that? Because...
Well, the skinheads are an interesting one because what most people don't know is that it started out in the UK in around 1968 as the first multicultural movement in the UK. That is, it was a mashup of sort of poor white working class mods and Jamaican rude boys. And it was a mashup of those two things. 5 years later, the movement gets hijacked by a right-wing group called the National Front. This is the group that the media decides to report on. This idea of skinhead gets disseminated around the world, and all of a sudden, it's a racist thing, which it never was, And it's a great shame because it did start out as a really beautiful thing. And again, a testament to the power of culture. But it got hijacked by the right-wing man.
Right.
And today, if you do see a skinhead, he's more likely to be a right-wing motherfucker. But there are plenty that ain't.
So, would you you started working at Acme Attractions?
That's a long time ago, but yeah. 75, yeah.
did you already have style influences before you started working there, or did you gain?
Hell yeah! I'm a Jamaican. Style is in our DNA. And it's not only being a Jamaican, it's a working class thing. You got to understand, a lot of these movements in the UK were driven by the whole class structure. We can't compete with the middle and upper class through the car we buy or the house we buy, but we can through the clothes we wear and the music that we listen to. And that's why that combination in the UK became such a powerful thing, because it's the only means of expression and identity that a working class kid could access.
Mm-hmm. Could you identify yourself with that as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it's interesting. Like, if you're grappling for a place, you use what you have available. And I like what Don was saying in the sense that, you control what you can control. You can control this. Sort of reminds me of graffiti. It's like you're powerless in a system that's everywhere all around you, but you can walk up to it and you can put your hand on it.
Yeah,
paint it. Yeah.
So you do that, and you put your mark on it.
It's
and then
punk
you
rock.
were there.
Yeah, you use what you got to get what you need.
Erased. Yeah.
What they call the do-it-yourself culture, right?
I think that's punk rock's greatest gift, to be honest, the whole DIY thing. I mean, if it wasn't for their inspiration, I might well have not picked up my Super 8 camera.
And that's where it started.
That's where it started for me. I saw the punks picking up guitars. I wanted to pick up something too. I picked up a Super 8 camera and reinvented myself as Don Letts, the filmmaker.
What spoke to you in, say, culture-wise, the music you listen to?
Well, back in the day?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm old, man. I'm as old as rock and roll. I was born in 1956. So, I started off, my entrance into music was like the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles. I was mad on the Beatles. And the very first live show I ever saw was the Who in 1971, doing a dress rehearsal for the Who's next tour. And it was the most mind-blowing thing I'd ever seen to this day, actually. I mean, that was my first entrance into the whole world of rock and roll. And then I guess the next big step would have been seeing Bob Marley play the Lyceum in like 76 or something. But I think, as I said earlier, I don't like to be defined by, I refuse to be defined by my color. So if something spoke to me, I embraced it. And that's why my black brothers called me a freak. They'd be like, Don Letts, why are you listening to Led Zeppelin? That's white man music.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it speaks to me. I'm going to listen to it,
But later on, this became this sort of like rock versus disco thing, right?
Yeah.
Where,
I mean, there's that tribalism, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean, the only people that listen to one kind of music are stupid 10-year-olds. Any intelligent person, if you go around anybody's house, I guess if you look through their collection, they're going to have a mix of music,
Yeah. Did you also had sort of a filmmaker influence growing up, or?
Oh, how do you mean?
Who are your inspirations as filmmakers?
Oh man, like for Doc specifically, I got like immediately like really wild, about the Maisels. Of course, those guys were absolutely huge. I mean, I think in a weird way, they probably accidentally helped invent reality television, because of their whole sort of philosophy, which I'm sure would just spin them over in their graves. I think they're both dead now, but it's just this idea that cinema is already happening. Like you don't have to go out and set it up. It's already occurring, and like perhaps you could just stand there. I'm a big story guy. I love sentences. That's my main thing, and it's really interesting to me this style of narrative that they developed, which was the absolute hardest story style to tell, which is what they call the emotional arc. Which is like making an arc that someone can follow out of just occurrences that are just organically developing. Yeah, it's you cannot fake that. That is the hardest form of narrative to form. So yeah, I love those guys. They're amazing. But I have to say, their editor, the real person that developed it, was female, and you don't hear about her as much as you should. Yeah, I don't remember her name.
Oh, shit, that's terrible, man.
Well, yeah, but I mean, to kind of like shoot all this stuff and go, we have this idea to invent this new style of narrative is one thing, but to pull it off is an entirely another thing. And the editor is the person that did that,
And that's why they get Oscars.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're looking at culture these days, specifically maybe taking a example like Notting Hill Carnival, does that change?
Hey, man, what doesn't? I mean, it's no longer when it started, it was a representation of black people's culture and how we felt living in the UK back it actually started in the late 50s, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But took to the streets in the mid 60s.
Yeah.
And it was very much a black expression. In the 21st century, all tribes are welcome. And it kind of reflects, I guess, the multicultural mix that makes London so interesting. I believe it's by embracing all these different cultures that will actually make Britain great again, not through fucking things like Brexit,
Yeah, but it does seem like we sort of divide, or we get divided, I would say. And yet there is a need for a cultural stable factor.
Who is it? Was it the Russians were saying, what is it? I think they had this thing where, the way to a person's heart is through culture.
Yeah.
And they understood the power of culture to kind of bring people together and let them, express how they feel or whatever. And, in today's celebrity-driven culture, that all seems to have disappeared. It's fun. I was thinking the other day, remember, was it Andy Warhol? And he said that in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. He dreamt that. He dreamt, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. And you fast forward to now, and it's like his dream has become a nightmare of people that can't justify 3.
A true nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah. But can you see then this sort of like this, maybe this famousness or do-it-yourself culture as being represented in social media, YouTube?
Man, that's a trick question. Listen, 90% of social media is bullshit, but there are people that do really brilliant things with that. I mean, the problem with modern technology in the digital age isn't the technology, it's the people and what they do with it. There's plenty of examples around the world where Facebook and Twitter have been life-saving devices. Off the top of the Arab Spring, that was how people organized, and that's how they let people know what was going on. It's not technology's fault that in the West, people are taking pictures of what we've just ate and they're fucking ugly kids. That's not technology's fault. Basically, Don Lett says, technology is great, people are shit. That's the problem. That is the problem.
Trademark.
Well, it's true. It's true, man. Technology is a beautiful thing, but what we do with it, oh my God.
So how do you think then about something like either the capitalization of culture or the appropriation of culture?
The other one, out of the 21st century. Bill, the appropriation of culture.
You don't like talking about it?
No, it's just a weird one, man, because it's very much in vogue. And you know what? It's a worthwhile conversation because there's no two ways about it. There is an undoubted disparity between the exploitation of culture and the rewards that people get out of that. Jamaica and reggae comes to mind.
Yeah.
But, the whole evolution of creativity is about people being inspired by a different culture. And I think it's down to the individual to work out if what they're dealing with is... What was it we're talking about? Exploitation or inspiration? That's the dividing line. And lots of things are inspired by different cultures. And at the same time, hand in hand, there's businesses that will always exploit that. And those two things have always gone hand in hand. And that's not to say that we shouldn't raise our hand and call things out when they are shit and they are taking advantage. You know what I mean? But don't be kind of putting everything under that umbrella of exploitation. It doesn't work.
Absolutely. I mean, it's good to be respectful, but also you have to be able to absorb or we're not going to come together.
Yeah, or move things forward,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a very Brazilian way of thinking. Brazilians have this in their culture.
Right, it's a global way of thinking. It's the only way forward, man. It's all of us or none of us, really. It's the only way we're going to go forward.
Yeah. Good. So what I noticed in the movie was that there were 2 moments where you were doubting or confronted with your own culture. That was the moment where you met your grandparents.
Yeah.
And the moment you went to
Africa. You can say, fuck me up. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's interesting. You grow up in England and you're surrounded by reggae music and you're eating your Jamaican food and you're talking the lingo and you think you're a Jamaican. And it's only when I went there in 1978 with Johnny Rotten for the first time that I realized that I was obviously something different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I couldn't deny my British roots that were very much a part of who I am. And I'm very proud of that part. I'm glad that I'm into the Stones and the Beatles and big fat Zeppelin riffs and the Clash and the Who and, Pistols. That's made me who I am today. And it wasn't until I went, and before I went to Jamaica, it was like, I want to go back to my roots. And I think that trip made me realize my roots were where I was. right there
Right
in the
there.
UK. That was my roots, man. And to pretend anything else was ridiculous, as I said in the film, actually.
So did you notice that?
What's
as
that?
well, when we're talking to Mr. Letts about this.
Oh yeah, that's why we put it in there.
Yeah, I know that. That's the end result. But I mean, you did have some conversation about this, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, it was, I think clear from the very beginning, that the sort of, wider sort of macro arc of what was going on. And the thing that really like appealed to me about the story was that you always try to find something that's central, that anybody can sort of grab onto. And the first thing that I sort of saw and grabbed onto there was that this is a really great story about a young man who's trying to find himself in a complicated situation.
Yeah.
And is walking around and seeing himself reflected in all these different glasses and saying, like anyone does who lives their life, is that like you see bits of pieces and you go, what is me and what isn't me? And that's how, a person that eventually becomes a self-actualized person finds themselves and becomes something that one could consider to be whole. And so, we knew the movie was going to be fun and do all this stuff with music and stuff. But on a wider sort of level, you want to, as a filmmaker, you want to try to find that thing that unites all the pieces. And so that was sort of one of the things. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. One thing I also noticed was that during an interview, you say, you have a voice, stand up and be counted.
I didn't say that. Isn't that James Brown or somebody? Or maybe I just stole it. Did I say that?
You said that in the interview with the Italian film crew.
Oh, I did?
Yeah. I don't know if you took it from somebody, but you said it.
Yeah. Stand up. You have a voice. I mean, maybe what's it called? A re-quoting. But it doesn't sound like, stand up and be counted. Definitely doesn't sound like it's like, James Brown or...
I did find it fitting for you seeing the movie. Like, okay, it's something which... Because you also refer to yourself as a black and British thing, which shocked me a bit.
Why?
It looks so narrow-minded or something. Or...
Black and British is narrow-minded. If you understand the reach that has, it's exactly the opposite. Yeah, go on.
Black and British thing.
I think you're hanging on to me just throwing away words. I think the thing, I probably said something that, it was a black and British thing. The black and British was the bit you're supposed to hear. The thing was just like a little adage.
But I can tell you how I interpreted that. I actually really liked that word because what I took out of it was that it was a thing that wasn't fully defined yet. It was still like kind of a thing. Because I've heard you guys talk a lot about how that time period was still trying to figure it out. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like when you talked about Jazzy B and Soul to Soul, it's like a big conversation about like, this thing hasn't gotten to a thing where we can put our finger on it and go, it's exactly this.
Absolutely
right. So it's a thing.
Yeah. And it took basically, it took a bloody long time for being black and British to mean something, because before it meant something, we were thinking we were like Jamaican or African or wherever our roots were. But then we realized, no, we are, for better or worse, we are this thing that is British, black British, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Okay, that makes it clear. You also say like you're working from...
This is what they're going to do when they say the film. They're going to keep saying, you said this and you said that. And I change my mind every other day. It's funny because I'm quite daunted by it. This is the first screening of Bill's film.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? And when they entered this project, I'm saying, like, guys, are you sure? Do I really deserve this space? And anyway, they convinced me that I did, and here we are for the first screening, and now I'm beginning to see what's about to come.
Yeah.
Don, you said this. Don, you said that.
So we did an in-progress screening in LA, and we did a survey. I'd never done it before. Yeah. I really enjoyed doing it. I'd definitely do it again. But one of the questions was, do you think this is a story worth telling? And it was one of our highest scoring. I don't think I ever told you that. But it was one of our highest scoring
You've heard it here
points on the survey. Well, next to do you like Don?
Is that a question? That's a question.
I wanted to know if people liked you in the.
I guess
I
guess it's relevant.
I was like, "Do you like Don?" was one of the questions, and that was a really high scoring one. And then the other was just like, "Is this worth doing? Is this worth telling?"
I can relate to that answer because when you see what Mr. Letts has done, music videos, the films. Such a huge part of culture. Documentaries as well. Yeah. But especially the music videos. Rock the Casbah. I'm a huge fan of The Clash, first and foremost. But then, seeing this video knowing now that you made this,
Yeah, I did all the Clash videos actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
In fact, London Calling was my very first one.
Yeah, it's in the documentary as well.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. I mean, tonight
you-
when I see it, it's going to be the first time I'm seeing it on a big screen properly.
Ah, right.
So yeah,
With good sound.
everything we've got everything, colorized and the whole trip. Yeah,
But you're also doing a Q&A afterwards, right?
I believe so. And people are going to go, Don, you said this. Don, you said that. Shit.
I think that will be nice.
Okay. All right.
So, I wanted to ask you a question about. You said I was working from a fire in my belly.
I said that?
Oh
See?
no,
Okay,
Andy
yeah.
Oliver says it. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
you were also working from some sort of instinct, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely instinct driven. Totally. I never went to film school, never did any kind of creative training. I never even read the instructions that came with my first camera. So everything is instinctually driven. I try to, Joe Strummer said, the only way to come up with an original idea is to kind of remove your brain from the equation. I don't know if that makes sense. I tell you, it was a similar thing. Orson Welles once said, if you want to make a truly original film, don't watch films.
All right.
And I can kind of dig it. You know what I mean?
But yeah. I work upon a feeling, notice something, but you do have to have a feeling for what is happening or what
Absolutely.
what can go, because otherwise you might miss something or
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. There's two sides of that argument because people like, I don't know, Spielberg and Scorsese are totally educated by film and TV. You know what I mean? So different strokes.
And I had a question about where you sort of you get your influence from, and what was sort of the major quality that you had in the beginning before working at Acme Attractions.
The major quality that I had before working.
Which leads you to have such a important role in the music industry or in the culture industry. Because I think
That's a hard one. Man, I'd have to say I just got good taste. I don't know. I don't know.
I think that's exactly the point.
Mate, yeah, but that's a bit abstract as well, but it works for me, obviously. But I couldn't put my finger on that. I mean, maybe if I could, I'd be a fraud. Maybe, I don't know.
I have a little take on this too, just from getting to know Don and stuff, and obviously knowing the story, is that one of the things I noticed about him, just like as a person, just like meeting him, through the Slits film, was that Don really will like reach across the situation in a way that a lot of people won't. And I think when you don't do that, it causes you to sort of naturally slip into the background, which is someplace I never really see Don going. Like, Don will like verbally, he's, I don't even want to use the word aggressive, but he's going to reach through and he's going to get to you and he's going to find out what your reaction is. And by doing that, he's going to find out who you are. And then all of a sudden you're accidentally having a real conversation and a real interaction. And I think people that like truth and they like reality respond to that. And it becomes a situation where, other people that are seeking that in their own lives recognize this person as someone. Yeah. So where someone like Don could even just collect people on the sidewalk accidentally, I think.
Yeah. It's also in the documentary. You bumped into Joe Strummer at Times Square.
Yeah,
Who
that's
bumps
true.
into Joe Strummer at Times Square?
Funny enough, when it comes to Joe, a lot of people.
I think you said in the BBC in the podcast thing that maybe he, like years later, you were like, maybe he planned that. Where
Yeah,
he
he might be
was,
hanging.
like,
Yeah, really.
laying in wait to try to get it on that session.
Yeah. Because he wanted to get back with Mick. Yeah.
I love that idea that he's like sitting there smoking
Lurking
cigarettes.
outside the studio, waiting for me to drag him in.
Which of the bands was for you the most exciting to work with?
Oh, they all had their qualities, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they were the Clash. I mean, obviously, Topper was in his own space, and I had, the least of my relations were with Topper for somewhat obvious and well-documented reasons. But Mick and I, obviously, we did Big Audio Dynamite together, so we were very close from that perspective. Paul and I shared very similar backgrounds. He grew up in Brixton as a skinhead, and his whole thing is being into reggae and all that, and style and fashion. I mean, he's totally responsible for the whole look of the Clash.
Right.
And Joe, hey, God, what can you say about Strummer, man? He's one of these people that come along once every decade, like your Woody Guthries and your John Lennons and your Dylans and your Chuck D's and your Gil Scott Herons. Sadly missing in the 21st century, actually.
Yeah.
Again, like you going back to that thing you said about things flatlining. And in the 21st century, for whatever reason, we don't seem to be throwing up these kind of characters. What are we, 20 years in to fucking the 20? Yeah, man, it's disgusting. Who's the baddest boy in 21st century? Who is it? Who? Justin Bieber, right? Or something, but bad. No, he's a dick, obviously. But I'm saying, no, who is the rebel in the 21st century? Rhetorical question. Yeah. I'll just throw that out to the listeners of Rotterdam.
Fill it in yourself. Comment on the Facebook page. Yeah. I would.
Who are the real bad boys of the 21st century?
I would look into the trap music genre. I would look there. There's some bad boys there.
Yeah, but bad with the wrong definition
have a confident
of bad.
look on your face right now.
No, and also I can't take people shouting men shouting at me all day long. I can't take that anymore. You know what I mean? No? I like a bit of melody and things. Yeah, geezers. Anything that's too many men drives me mad. I'm more in touch with my feminine side. But mate, I don't know much about trap. I'm 64 years old. That music ain't for me. You know what I mean? Mm. It's another generation's language.
Yeah, also for me.
Yeah. Hey, it's all about taste. Lucky I got some.
So, you're having the screening now at the film festival.
Yep.
Did you ever been to Rotterdam?
Yeah, this is actually my second time here because we premiered. We did the international premiere of the Slits film Here to Be Heard here as well. Yeah, 2 years ago. So I missed a year, but yeah.
All right. Do you like it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really nice.
Why are there so many fucking McDonald's here, man? Is that my imagination? Like round here's like 10 McDonald's.
No.
And lots of sneaker shops.
Yeah, that's
tons
true.
of sneaker shops.
Yeah, but not very good.
You guys, Rotterdam people walk a lot? Is that it? What the hell?
No, there's a large sneaker culture here.
Okay. I just been walking around. All that McDonald's sneakers. Anyway.
No, there are not that many McDonald's.
I've seen 4. There's 4 within like a 5-minute walk around here.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'm in the wrong area, but yeah.
Have you ever been to Rotterdam?
No.
This is your first time here?
I think so. I mean, my memories... BAD's never played here, right? I know we played in Amsterdam.
Amsterdam, probably.
Yeah. No, I'm not familiar with this town at all.
Yeah. For how long did you play with BAD?
8 years, I think. Wasn't it about 8 years? Yeah. First 4 albums.
Yeah. Did you have fun during that time?
Absolutely, man. I mean, for a guy that can't play a musical instrument, it was a buzz to have written, 4 albums.
Because you were responsible for the sampling?
Sampling. Well, I basically, when I started, I wanted to feel like I was contributing, but I couldn't play an instrument. So I did all that sample and dialogue stuff.
Yeah.
But I quickly realized you don't get paid for stealing other people's ideas. So quickly threw myself into writing lyrics with Mick's help. And, I co-wrote 50% of the songs with Mick. And I'm really proud of that shit. Really proud of that.
Yeah. I think last year you had a collaboration with Noah, clothing brand.
Oh, you know that? Yeah, there was some collab thing where they put out... Basically, it was a merchandising thing. I mean, I would have preferred if some new music had got out. That's more interesting to me. But if it shines a light on something that I think is worth shining a light on, but I would say that, then yeah, it's all good.
They did a mixtape.
They did?
Yeah.
You're kidding?
Mm.
Well, with BAD...
I'll send you the link.
You're kidding?
Yeah.
They slipped that one by us.
But this is something...
it's all good.
Now we're coming back to the capitalization of cultures. It is something you agree on, because I know that... I forgot his name, but the artist who did the artwork for the Dead Kennedys, Winston.
I don't remember either, but I know you're talking
something
about.
With Winston.
Yeah.
He's getting really upset with brands using his images, sort of like,
But that's exploitation.
Right.
See, that's the difference. It's easy. I mean, it's quite an easy thing to see whether something is inspired or is just ripping off something. It's easy.
I mean, there's a huge thing with that with Betty Page when she whacked out and disappeared and tried to kill those people and then showed up years later and there was just everywhere. Yeah. Her image just absolutely everywhere. And she wasn't, of course, seeing dime one. I think she ended up getting a little piece of that and giving it to, I think, her sister's kids.
But
it's a huge thing.
But in the digital age, it's really hard to stop that, man. It's really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, the Clash know all about that. I mean, half the T-shirts you see are bootlegs.
Yeah.
Although they do say imitation is the greatest form of flattery, What's
next for...
Oh man, well, I don't I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about it, but we are working on.
You don't have to.
Yeah, we're working on something I'm very excited about. Should be a lot of fun. Is that vague enough?
Yeah, that's vague enough. Can maybe narrow it down to culture, music.
Okay, so still music, but touching into true crime. I sort of accidentally became obsessed with true crime recently.
Okay.
It was like a really like slippery slope. Like somebody was like, "Oh, I should listen to this podcast." I never cared about serial killers my entire life. My sister was always into it, and so he was like, "Oh, you should listen to this true crime podcast." And it was a year and a half ago, and I've listened to 65 different series now, and I'm working on one that's coming up, and it's related to the project that I'm hinting at. Yeah. So it's a weird kind of project because it's literally like a bridge because it still is music as well.
Ah, cool. Very interesting. And for you, sir?
Me, I'm in negotiations with an outfit called Afropunk. I don't know if you're aware of them. It started off as a sort of movement and now has evolved into a massive festival that tours around the world. And again, it's about, going back to the thing about black people that are not being defined by their color. And I'm in negotiations to do a doc about that.
Oh,
and I've still got my radio show and I'm still DJing and all the rest of it.
Great.
Tonight, in fact.
Oh, yeah.
You're DJing tonight?
I'm DJing here tonight, but my radio show tonight is a pre-record. It's actually called Culture Clash Radio. And it's every Sunday night, 10 till 12 on BBC Six Music. And you can download it and listen to it at your convenience.
We'll talk to the BBC.
No, you can just
about
download it on the internet. You just download it. It's what do you call it? iPlayer shit.
And again, we should definitely thank Phil again because seriously, this was all his entire idea for us to do this, and he's the one that put it all into motion.
Who I first met as a BAD fan when he was a young teenager.
Wow. I left school at 16, became a photographer. And, being a massive fan of The Clash and BAD formed, I was like, right, I've got to meet them. So I started like photographing their gigs and just stuck around for many years. And it was actually, there's people in one's life who really make a difference. And Don was one of them who he'd see my Super 8 stuff and really encouraged me. And so, I took I went from being a stills photographer into movies in the late 90s, and I've done over 300 movies as a producer or executive producer. So thanks, Don. And I also have to say that this is probably one of the most important films in my repertoire. So, yeah. Thanks.
Damn. And he's just producing something. Oh, no, I was about to give away who you were working on your next film with, I would say.
Yeah, Depp.
Yeah, and all that.
There's loads of big movies, but this is the far more interesting and important one.
He said it's a little movie with a big heart.
There you go.
Rebel Dread.
Rebel Dread.
Signing off, I believe.
We are, indeed. So if you have the chance, do watch Rebel Dread at the film festival at 8 o'clock tonight. But there are...
And it's free, apparently.
Yeah. And Don, there's a Q&A and Don's doing a DJ set straight after the film.
So, and where is it at? Do you know the location? It is. I'm just opening it up right now. It is at
the theater.
De Schouwburg.
Yes, that's
Schouwburg.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
I can't pronounce
Rotterdam Schouwburg. Grote zaal. Kleine zaal, excuse. Right.
8 o'clock,
Right. 8 o'clock. Okay. Thank you so very much for being here, for spending time with us. A lot of success on your further endeavors.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And hopefully till next time.
Thanks for the airspace. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.